Welcome to OLC 4.0. It is term 1A. This is class number 28. Today we are working on assignment 38, which is a resume, and we're also looking at adverb clauses. It is Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024, and I am Jillian Percy. Here is all our contact information. If you want to talk to me in the studio, 1-800-465-7144. If you want to join by Zoom, your DEC should have the link, but you can also use nnec-on-ca.zoom.us/j/924-617-3555. If you want to have a discussion about something when I'm not on the air, you can call the office 1-800-667-3703, extension 2211. And I am also available on Facebook, capital G, capital P, ERCY, space, capital W, AHSA. Fair warning, I do not check that as often as I probably should because I don't have a lot of students reach out to me that way. So my email is a more reliable way to reach me because I check that constantly throughout the day. That email would be jillian.percy@nnec.on.ca. I also have YouTube. You can't really respond to me on YouTube, but you can see the classes. If you go to the playlists tab and click on it, these are the playlists that will come up. This is the only one for this school year. All the rest are from last year. And we are almost finished this playlist. We only have about a week and a half to go, I guess. And so you would click on this. This should all be in order. And if you just walk through class by class, then you would be able to take the entire course and explain the things pretty thoroughly. I think you should be able to do the course pretty easily with that information. If you are wanting to, if you take more than one course with us, we have this new kind of Uber channel here. That's the WASA Connect channel, not WASA Connect, WASA Distance Education Center channel. And this has all the classes that we've taught this term. So just since September, there's nothing on here from last year. And this is useful if you're taking like one course with me and then another's a course of math. And you can just kind of stop in one spot and it should all be here, okay? As far as I know, this is all up to date at this point. Okay, looking at our learning goals for today. Boy, we are at the spot where we're covering so many learning goals. I may have to start kind of strategically picking only the ones that are the most important or that are maybe new, okay? But anyways, for right now, correctly using sentences that have adjective and adverb clauses, identifying the topic, the audience, the purpose for writing, and the requirements of the particular writing form, using pre-writing strategies to generate ideas for writing, using appropriate strategies to organize your ideas and information for writing, such as using headlines while creating a resume, create a first draft that includes the main and supporting details in the required form, which in this case is a resume format. Revise drafts in a variety of ways in order to ensure that the tone and the level of language is appropriate to the audience and purpose, using appropriate strategies. As well, use appropriate strategies to edit your written work to achieve accuracy and conventions in the areas of grammar, usage, spelling, and punctuation. Use your knowledge of how to write summaries, information paragraphs, and opinion pieces to produce informational writing for a variety of personal and school-related purposes. All right, first up, we always tackle our grammar first, just kind of gets us our brains in the gear to do the next bit. Adjective and adverb clauses. We looked at, I believe, noun clauses either yesterday or the day before. And here we have adjective clauses. So remember, a clause always has to have a subject, which would be a noun or a pronoun, and then a verb. Sometimes it can stand on its own, which is an independent clause. In other words, it could be a sentence all by itself, or it can be a dependent clause. Usually, something is a dependent clause when it can't stand on its own, often because there's a subordinate conjunction word at the front that makes it clear that it needs to be connected to something else and it just sounds funny without it. Oh, and crazy Google. Crazy old Google. What is it? Why does it always hijack things? All right. Okay, so if you're out there in radio land, what I'm currently doing is just kind of retyping everything and trying to log back in because it sort of hid all my work on me all of a sudden. Hang on a sec. There we go. Okay. Back to normal here. Okay. So adjective clauses give information about the noun. They allow you to combine two smaller sentences into one larger sentence by using relative pronouns. The relative pronouns are who, whom, whose, where, when, which, that, and why, and they're being used as a connector to connect the two parts of the sentence. These pronouns are basically acting as the subject of the clause, okay? The clause must also have a verb, which can include state of being verbs such as am, is, are, was, and were. Those are the ones that sometimes we have trouble noticing as a verb because we think of verbs as being actions, but they aren't always actions. These kinds of clauses usually come right after the noun they're describing instead of before the noun, like just a single adjective by itself would. So for here we have my friend is the noun, who was sick. That's a little dependent clause, borrowed my medicine. The experienced doctor, whom many people respect, is the new head of the department. So doctor is the noun, whom many people respect is the adjective clause. Now, a lot of times in the past, when we were doing dependent clauses, we were creating, what do you call them? Complex sentences where you linked a dependent clause with an independent clause. Those were usually two separate sections of one sentence. This is a little more complicated because you couldn't just say my friend who was sick, right? It doesn't make sense by itself. It needs to be connected to the whole rest of the sentence. So it's not quite the same thing as a complex sentence, even though it does have a dependent clause. Okay. I admire the new singer whose latest single just hit #1. So singer is the noun. Whose is the pronoun that is the beginning of our relative clause here. And just hit. Hit is our verb. Okay. I met a man that works at the new store. So man is the noun. That works at the new store is our adjective clause. The house which has gone on sale is looking beautiful. Which has gone on sale is an adjective clause describing the noun house. I have always wanted to visit the coast where my friend has a cabin by the ocean. So coast is the noun, where my friend has a cabin by the ocean is our adjective clause. And then finally, the winter time, when it gets dark early, often triggers depression for people. Okay. A lot of times you can see these little phrases like they're adding usually information that's kind of important to identify the person, like my friend borrowed my medicine. Which friend? The one who was sick. The experienced doctor is the new head of the department. Which doctor? The one who many people respect. It's usually like extra information that's pretty important to understanding the noun in the sentence. Okay, so adverb clauses, just like any other clause, must have both a subject and a verb, and they will modify or describe a verb, another adverb, or an adjective, just like an adverb does. And also like an adverb, they will answer the same kinds of questions. How, why, when, where, to what extent, with what conditions. Adverb clauses will start with a subordinating conjunction. They are a type of dependent clause and they cannot stand alone as a sentence. This can be one way to create a complex sentence. Okay, quick review of, these are the common subordinating conjunctions. They're the ones you're going to see most often. There are other ones, okay? Things like after, although, as far as soon as if, as though, because, before, even if, even though, how, if only, in as much as, in case that, in order that, insofar as, in that, just as, lest, no matter how, now that, once, only if, provided that, rather than, since, so that, supposing that, than, that, though, till, unless, until, when, whenever, where, wherever, whether, while, and why. So that's a common list. Okay, so adverb clauses can serve a range of functions. They can describe the manner, like how something is done. For example, he ran as fast as he could. As fast as he could is the adverb clause. It can describe place, where something is happening. I bring my phone wherever I go. Purpose, why something is happening. Vera bought Tom this gift because she thought he would like it. Can talk about time, when something's happening. After they set up the tent, they built a fire. Condition, or like the idea of possibilities. David will be here at 2 o'clock if he gets the next train. Comparing things or contrasting things. Patrick can speak French as well as I can. Concession, that's definitely you're introducing a contrast there. Although it's raining, it's still warm outside. Okay, so those are all some examples of adverbial clause. Now, an adverb clause can come at the front or it can come at the end of the sentence. If it comes at the front, you put a comma before you write the rest of the sentence. So we would have, even though he was broke, comma, Dan was determined to go out that weekend. After I get finished at work, comma, I am planning to go fishing with my friends. But when the adverb clause comes at the end of the sentence, it's just kind of part of the natural flow of the sentence and it doesn't need the comma. I told my mom to come over whenever she wanted to on Sunday. It just flows very naturally. It's not that kind of chopped up sentence that you're doing. And so it makes more sense and you don't need to bother putting the comma there. How do you decide whether to put it in the front or the back? Well, sometimes you put the adverb clause in the front if the writer is really wanting to emphasize that part of the sentence. Like if I was talking to a child, I might say, provided that you get your homework done, I will take you shopping tonight. And I'm trying to stress the homework has to get done first, then we'll go shopping. Another example might be, unless my boss lets me have the day off, I won't be able to go on vacation. So they're giving you a condition. If this happens, then I'll be able to do the other thing. Otherwise, no. And sometimes the adverb clause just seems to fit more naturally at the end of the sentence, and it would sound kind of weird if we put it at the front. We can set up the tent wherever we want to at the campsite. It wouldn't really make sense the other way around. Wherever we want to at the campsite, we can set up the tent. I mean, you could say it, it just sounds really strange. I have to cook dinner after work, no matter how tired I feel. Now that one you could put first if you want to emphasize, gosh, I'm so tired and the work never stops. But it just kind of depends where you want the emphasis. Okay. I don't think we're going to do this, but if you wanted to, you could check out Cliff's notes. There's all sorts of good grammar stuff there, and there's a cute little quiz there that you can run through and practice this if you're having a hard time understanding these. They're a bit tricky, and they're usually stuff that doesn't get covered that much in grade school, I don't find. Okay, so the next learning goals, these relate to our assignment about the resume. Look at this. I keep telling it, let me use the hyphen there because the government uses the hyphen there, but for some reason, spell check insists on trying to get rid of that hyphen for me. Okay, so here are all our resume learning goals. I can identify the topic, the audience, the purpose for writing, and the requirements of the particular writing form, which in this case is a resume format. I can use pre-writing strategies to generate ideas for writing. I can use appropriate strategies to organize my ideas and information for writing, such as using headlines while writing a resume. I can create a first draft that includes the main and supporting details in the required format. I can use the knowledge of how to write summaries, information paragraphs, and opinion pieces to produce informational writing for a variety of personal and school-related purposes. Okay, yeah. So there, in the original course, there was a bunch of information that for some reason they put after the resume assignment, and I sort of put it here. I don't think this is actually even in the new version, but it's still kind of helpful, so I'll just kind of read it anyways. Because you're completing this grade 12 English course, the assumption is that you're probably graduating from high school soon, and you may have been thinking about what you're going to do once you receive your diploma. You may want to further your education by attending college or university, or some other sort of post-secondary program away from home. I want to point out, these days, since COVID, there are a lot of post-secondary courses you can take without ever leaving your reserve, okay? Contact North, a lot of people have that. Even if you don't, the individual colleges across Ontario still offer lots of things online only. You would just have to like look it up and connect. It doesn't have to be through Contact North. They just kind of make it easier, that's all. You might want to stay in your own home community and continue with whatever you've been doing, which maybe you've got a good job already. Maybe you're at home raising a family. Maybe you want to look for a new job there. Whatever you're going to decide to do is going to depend on your interests and your needs and skills. A career is a term used to cover related types of work. Examples of careers are hospitality, aviation, and education. An occupation or a job refers to something more specific, such as a front desk clerk, a pilot, an elementary teacher. Okay. So I don't know if this is still in your unit. I might have taken it out because it's a little bit old-fashioned. What are the best sources for information? They got computer experience, print, video, and people. I would say video is no longer really an issue. It's kind of all gone to computer. But one of the things that they want you kind of notice is people are still one of the best sources for information on doing a job. Like if you've never done a job where you worked as a nurse, before you go to school for 4 years to become a nurse, go in, talk to some people who are nurses, do some volunteer work, get a chance to practice it before you spend a whole bunch of time and money prepping for a career that you may find you don't like. Like, so for example, for teaching, sometimes we get people who've never taught, they've never done any kind of teaching at all. And the first year they quit because, oh, wait, this is way harder than what I thought it was going to be, right? Whereas other people, they've been a summer counselor, or they've instructed some sort of course at the local community center, or they've done teaching informally, so they have a better sense of what it actually requires. Computer, all sorts of good stuff on there. YouTube for sure. There is stuff in newspapers. There's also magazines. There will be professional journals. Now, a journal is like a magazine, but it's kind of a little more upscale. So there are like magazines that are specifically geared towards certain occupations. Like if you're a pilot, there are magazines that are only about working in the airline industry. As a teacher, there's at least two, probably a lot more, journals that are only about teaching, right? If you pick up those, you're going to see what some of the common issues are, what some of the common legal problems may be. They usually have a little section where there's jobs. So those are good sources. Now, there is a new job search site in our regional area. I don't know if everybody's heard of it. It's Northwest Employment Works. I believe it's like a special branch of Confederation College, but it isn't only advertising jobs from Confederation College. It advertises all sorts of jobs. The URL is over here. It's just basically northwestworks.ca. And here is how the new site looks. If you take a look, do I have it? Okay, over here. All right, I'll just kind of click over here. So here you can see it, right? That's the overall site. Up top, you've got a section on job seekers. If you're an employer, here's a section on how you'd post a job. Here are some of the different services they offer. This shows their current events, and here's how you would contact them if you wanted to contact them. So if you are in Sioux Lookout, or even if you're just in Sioux Lookout briefly, you can meet up with these people and they will sit down and help you achieve your career goals. So that's a great resource if you haven't had a chance to try them yet. Okay. It's also a great place to look for jobs, okay? If you go to the job seeker tab and there's a spot right at the front where it says job bank, you click on that. There's a bunch of different filters at the bottom and you can, they start off as they're all selected. So you have to unselect the ones you don't want. So volunteer means you're working for free. If you don't want to work for free, take that one off. But if you're a student who's just looking for some experience, then maybe that works for you. Then we've got training, temporary or contact work, student work. Now, for this one, if you are a grown-up but you are taking our course, you don't count as a student in this sense. What they're looking for here is people who are under 18 because they can pay them a different rate, right? The student minimum wage and the adult minimum wage are two different things. And the people that are posting those kind of jobs normally expect that students are not going to be able to work the same hours that an adult can work. So that's specifically about your age rather than whether you're in school or not. Remote positions only, part-time, an internship, full-time, or casual. Also, you've got the regions. I forget what they've got there. Dryden, Sioux Lookout, Thunder Bay. I feel like Marathon's on there. I'm not sure. Okay, then you would click on one of the job links and you would get all the information about the job duties and the requirements. So up top, it tells you it posted 2 weeks ago. It closes on December 31st. Independent First Nations Alliance posted it. Here they have some information generally about the job. Here they have very specific job duties. And here they have the position requirements. In other words, this is what they want you to have. Completion of secondary school, that's high school. Additional training or education in office administration would be an asset. A minimum of 2 years working in administration. Now, finishing high school is an asset. When they say asset, that means it's optional. It'd be good, but it's not required. But here they're saying a minimum of 2 years. So that's something they really, really want. Proficient in the use of MS Office, including Word, Excel, and Outlook, a driver's license G with a clear driving abstract and an available, reliable vehicle. When you see that, it means you're going to be driving. And so that's usually a must-have, not an optional one. Clear criminal record check. Again, that's almost always like, that's non-negotiable. There were some more things. I just didn't have room to put everything. If you want to see more on that, you would just kind of go click on there. Okay, so here is the actual assignment. Assignment 37, yeah, creating a resume. Your task is to develop a chronological resume of your own using the template or outline provided on the next page and based on the information provided above with the sample. Now, a lot of you, because many of my students are older, you may already have a resume done either from an earlier course or just because you've used resume. Take a close look at it and you can revise it as necessary. I would hand whatever it is in, as long as it's got all the same categories, hand it in, that's your rough copy, and then revise it as you need to, and that becomes your good copy. The template on the next page, yep, that's your rough copy, and then produce a final copy. Now, it says here, produce a final copy in computer. As we've discussed, I know that not every single person has access to a computer. If you don't, then do this in the very best handwriting that you have, okay? It doesn't get you off the hook for doing a rough and a good copy. If you only hand me in a rough copy, you're automatically gonna get only half the marks, possibly less unless it's perfect. So please make sure to hand in both copies. Your resume is used to show an employer that you're the best person for the job. So you want it to be as professional looking as possible, and you want to include all your qualifications and positive characteristics because you want to make the greatest impression possible. The rough copy is 15 and the final copy is 15. Okay. Your name and address can either be centered at the top of the page or located at the left-hand margin. Either choice is fine. Your objective is something specific that you're hoping for. I'll talk about that more in a minute. And then when you're listing your information in the education and the work experience sections, make sure you start with the most recent education and then go work your way backwards, and the most recent work experience and then work your way backwards, okay? And then list any skills you have. Now it says list any three interests. We don't, I took that out because I really, really, really don't think that that's considered appropriate anymore. I haven't seen it on anything for a really long time. So I honestly would not, I'm going to block it off right there. Don't use that one. Okay, list three references if you can. If you're young and haven't done much work, this can be tricky, okay? A reference would be somebody who knows you pretty well and can say some good things about you, especially like in work related, right? If you're called upon. Some examples would be things like high school teachers, a former employee or a supervisor. You might use somebody who's a spiritual leader, like a pastor. If you're involved in organizations like Girl Guides or Rangers or cadets, somebody who's in charge of you there would be a good person to list as well, okay? Include their name, their job title. And again, if you know them as Scoutmaster, then that's okay to put because that's how they know you. So they're kind of explaining it, right? Their address and their telephone number. These days, I would also include an email, okay? Do not use any family members or relatives as references if possible. You can also just put the words available on request. Now, I want to talk about relatives for one sense. Up here in the north, I know some people might have many, 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 many cousins, and some of those people might be your boss at a workplace. It's totally fine to list a family member who has been your boss. That's a different thing. They just mean like, don't put your mom on it saying, "Whoo, my daughter's great," right? It has to be someone who can talk about your work abilities. Okay, that's all they're trying to say. So if your relative is somebody who is your manager or you're the owner of the store you work in, or you know they run the northern and that's where you work, then that's fine to use them. Okay. All right. So yeah, this is a sample. Here they've put the address information in the center. I would actually put the name Sherry Campbell much bigger, so it's kind of the first thing that stands out. Then they've got their objective, then they put their education, then they put their work experience, their skills, and their references. Let me take a look at the next sample. Here's another one. It's a little bit different. This one is made with the Canva program, and I mentioned that a few times throughout the course, and we're going to talk about it later. This is a great program. Please check it out. This one, they've put the work experience first. My feeling is the older you are and the more work experience you have, the more it makes sense to put your work experience first, right? If you're 50 years old and you've done some amazing jobs, don't put your education first. Put the work experience first. That's what they're really looking for. Okay. And you can see they did the most recent job started in October 2023. When they say present, that means you're still working there. Okay. January 2022 to September 2023. That was your second last job. And then internship, April 2021, December 2021. Now, one other thing, if you're older, you may have done a lot of jobs in your lifetime. You don't have to put every single job you've ever done down here. Typical is to go back 10, 15 years and do those. The other thing I've seen typically is the jobs that are relevant to that type of work. So like, let's say you have done a lot of work as an office manager, but in the summertime, you do a bunch of work as a guide, okay? But the job you're applying for is about being a manager. You might not include the work experience that you have in the summertime working as a guide because it doesn't really relate to the kind of job you're trying to connect to, okay? On the other hand, if you were applying for a job as a guide at a new place, then you might not worry about putting all your experience as a manager on there because it might not be relevant to your work as a guide. So if you're older and you have a lot of mixed experience in terms of what kind of jobs you've done, be judicious about what you put down. Then education here. Yep, education, where you took your program from, how long it took, key skills, and then references. So this is a nice little setup here. This is the rubric that I'm using to mark you with. I'm looking for that you followed resume formatting. Shows your awareness of the audience, purpose, and tone. Okay. Every now and again, I'll get somebody who writes something really silly on their resume. Most bosses or managers or people who are in a position to hire you are going to feel a little bit cautious or put off hiring somebody who's acting silly or flippant in their resume. So I really advise you not to, because even though you're technically writing to me, I'm marking it as if I were trying to hire you. So if you're being silly, I don't just take it as a student be silly. I'm like, okay, they don't understand the right tone for a resume. So be cautious of that. Your word choices where you're describing your job duties, you're picking active verbs, you're using a consistent verb tense, usually the past tense, but sometimes people use the present tense if it makes sense. And good description that really explains what's happening. Your rough copy meets the assignment criteria and is handwritten. This is what I'm saying, because every now and again, I'll have somebody who they'll just kind of scribble a few things on the paper. And they're like, well, it's the rough copy. Okay, yeah, but it doesn't meet any of the assignment criteria, so you didn't even pass the rough copy. Just because it's rough copy doesn't mean anything goes. It still means that you have to do a reasonably good job that meets what the assignment asks for. Your good copy, I'm looking for that it shows evidence of revisions in your word choice, your grammar, your phrasing. I'm also looking in your good copy that you've edited it for spelling, punctuation, and capitalization mistakes, okay? Now, I'm going to go through the main sections of a resume one by one here. Objective section. I have mixed feelings about this section. I do see it in some resumes, but I feel like I don't see it as much as I used to. It used to be like everybody had this, and that's why they've included it, but I don't see it as often. What I do see is a summary section at the top. So you're going to have to use your best judgment as to what one you want to use. For the assignment, you have to use objective. For your own personal resume, maybe you want to do a summary instead. So we're going to practice creating a good objective. Now, sometimes people aren't really sure what they're aiming for here. And this is where I sometimes find people get silly or kind of flippant, right? And they'll say something like, well, my objective is to get a high-paying full-time job that allows me to pay my bills. That just sounds like you're not taking the thing seriously. Obviously, all of us are working because we want to pay our bills. So you see the meme here where the interviewer is asking the job guy, so why do you want this job? And he says, well, I've always felt passionately about not starving to death. Like, yeah, we all know that, right? We all know you need work to pay your bills. What other reason? Why did you apply to this job as compared to the other guy down the street that did the same job? By the way, if you did apply to both places, I wouldn't mention it there, right? I would say, well, I applied here because I feel you guys are a great representative of a retail organization, and I've always heard that you treat your employees well, and blah, 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 right? You want them to hear good things about the company. So here we go. What the employer is really trying to get is a sense of what you're looking for. Are you looking for full-time work, part-time work, casual only? What type of skills do you have that you're hoping to use? In which department, if a larger company or if that's even important to you? With what type of job title? Now, that sounds funny, right? Job titles can be important or they can not be important. It really depends on the occupation and what job title what it might mean. So like sales associate and sales manager may sound really similar, but the manager job is going to pay more and have a lot more power in the company. So they actually are very different jobs. With what philosophy or attitude? This one isn't necessarily important for every type of job, but it can be especially important in fields like health, education, or social services work, where they might be looking for employees who share the same beliefs about how to approach clients. So keeping those items in mind, you want an objective that in one sentence or maybe two sentences kind of addresses all those different areas at once. So here's one example. I am looking for full-time work as an administrative assistant in which I can use my office skills to help organize and manage communications, workflow, and customer service relationships. Okay, here's another example in a different field. I am seeking full-time work as a childcare worker, which uses my ECE diploma and my 3 years of experience in early childhood education to provide outstanding programming and support to a preschool which values play-based education and values children's independence and individuality. Oh, I don't like that it has values twice, which promotes play-based education that values children's independence and individuality. This part here, that's all talking about philosophy or attitude. And if you're not in early childhood education, it might not make a lot of sense. But if you are in the field, it means, oh, I don't give the kids a bunch of worksheets. I look for ways for them to learn reading and writing in a natural play-based kind of way. So that's where things like philosophy or attitude might make a lot of difference, okay? So also just talking there about rough copy, good copy. People are always like, well, I don't know what to fix. Honestly, there I looked at one word and it kind of jarred, I fixed it. There's always things to fix in your writing, always. Education section. If you're taking this course, a lot of times people don't have passed high school, but not always. I do know I have lots of students in here who they didn't finish high school, but they went on and did college as a mature student. So definitely name those. And if that's the case, if you have a college diploma, I honestly just wouldn't worry about listing where you went to high school. Okay. But the other thing is sometimes you get additional education or training that you took at your workplace or on your own that might be useful to your next boss. Things like first aid, lifeguarding, heavy machinery certification, suicide prevention training, firefighting, Microsoft Excel. There's all sorts of things that you might have gotten, okay? Skills. Now, I have sometimes seen this super vague. I would not do that. Like I wouldn't just say word processing. I might say something more specific like excellent at using MS Word to create a variety of documents such as letters, agendas, programs, posters, and business documents. If I know how to use Google Docs, and the word perfect is out of date now, but any other programs, I would say a variety of programs, and I would list the programs. Other things that might have work-related relevance, second language skills, skills with other computer or software programs, web design skills. A lot of people are looking for people that can do that. Specific skilled trade skills like welding, construction, auto repair. Performing skills such as dance, public speaking, singing, musical instrument, obviously only if relevant to the job. But there are some jobs where doing those kinds of things could be useful. Like it sounds goofy, but when I was quite young, to be a kindergarten teacher, you actually had to be able to play piano at a certain level. It was just considered a requirement of being a teacher. So sometimes there can be oddball little things like that. Any office specific skills that might be useful if you're applying for an office job, filing, organizing, note taking, your keyboarding speed, if that's relevant, and any business specific skills that might be appropriate to the job you're applying for. Point of sale skills, merchandising, knowing how to do inventory, stocking, sales skills, running a database, things like that. Interests. I have taken this off the assignment because I don't think it's relevant. I think it can easily be off-putting. I really just, I've eliminated, I wouldn't bother putting it in there. Work experience. Typically you list 3 or 4 points or shortened sentences stating what you did at the job. Usually it starts with the verb, okay? You don't want to say things like responsible for, because usually that shows what you should have been doing, not what you actually did. And even if the skill seems really obvious, spelling it out for your potential employer is helpful. Again, start with the verb. So waitress. Okay, we all know that waitresses do this, but if you list it, then they know that you really understand it. Seated customers, took orders accurately, including substitutions, suggest sold drinks, desserts, and specials, operated point of sales machines, bussed tables, assembled salads, and made drinks when needed. Now, I wouldn't use all of them. I would just pick the 3 or 4 that were most important to me. Okay, here are some other verbs that show skills you know how to do, okay? Office work, you might want to mention that you know how to do things like filed, you organized, you alphabetized, recorded, tracked, phoned, monitored, answered, screened, delegated, created, or planned. Creative work, designed, sketched, planned, drew, painted, illustrated, proposed, sang, performed, acted, auditioned, crafted. Skilled trades, you might use words like operated, drove, utilized, carried, followed, assembled, cut, welded, built, constructed, painted, or designed. Leadership skills, you might use words like managed, organized, delegated, supervised, oversaw, implemented, monitored, interviewed, hired, administered, coordinated, initiated. Okay, it really depends on what you're doing, but you don't want to use the same word over and over again. Like if I'm describing my teaching skills, it's really easy to fall into the habit of just saying taught this, taught, but there's other words like supervise, instructed, tutored, that kind of mean very similar things, but it's not the same word over and over again. Okay, types of resumes. Gosh, I'm going to skim over this a little bit. There are three main types of resumes. There's a chronological resume, which is where it goes by time, backwards time, functional resume, and a hybrid resume. I'm going to focus on the chronological resume because it's the most commonly used and accepted format, but you should be aware that those other type of formats exist in case you want to use them in your own personal version of your resume, okay? They all have pros and cons. Most bosses like a chronological resume. So it's really my go-to. So I might have to skip over a little bit here just because I can see I'm running out of time. Okay, here's one example. We talked about this already. The work experience is listed in order of the date. Education is more likely to be placed near the bottom. Here they put it actually after skills. This one is best suited for people with lots of work experience. And the skills are listed underneath each job title they were done by. Now, one problem. Periods of unemployment will stand out. And if you've never worked, it obviously stands out. In which case I would call it's been like work and volunteer history. And I would make sure I'd done some volunteering. It also may not showcase talents or skills that are useful, but not obtained in the workplace. Okay, I'm going to kind of jump over some other things here. Okay. One thing I want to point out is if you are using something like Canva or you see some examples online, the one in the unit, I thought it looked a little bit outdated. I tried to update it a bit. If you look around at current resumes, you'll sometimes see examples like this. And I think this is partly like an American influence. In Canada, it's really frowned upon to put your picture on your resume. I honestly would not do it unless you're trying to get a job in modeling or acting. A lot of businesses consider it inappropriate because there's the chance that then you might be influencing them to hire you or not hire you because of your looks or your gender or your age or things like that. So to keep it simple, just don't do that. I also wouldn't use a lot of bold, fancy colors because sometimes your resume might be getting photocopied and stuck in different people's mailbox at work. They may not see any of your pretty colors. Also, if you are doing paper copies, I wouldn't use fancy or unusual papers. Just use normal, ordinary copy paper. When people are using those fancy papers, it's generally because they don't trust their own training or experience to stand out, okay? What software program? You can use Microsoft Word, you can use Google Docs, which again, you have access to as a WASA student. It also does contain some resume samples as well, which can help you set up the formatting if that's a problem. So I'm gonna start with Google Docs. The other one that I didn't mention, I mentioned kind of a little bit later on, but just in case I run out of time, is Canva. And we've used that before. And I believe we have access to it as students as well. They have lots of really great templates that you can use that too. All right, Google Docs, variety of templates. Let me see, can I pull it up? Yes. Oh, that's not what I was looking for. Oh, here we go. That's what I was looking for. Okay, so I have a couple of resumes come up right away. I'm going to grab this first one because I think it's kind of set up in the similar format. Hang on a sec. Okay. feel like we talked about this. Oh, you know what? It's the similar size thing as the cover letter. Okay, so you don't have to keep the same colors. You can select it and change the color to an ordinary color if you want to. If you want to add a whole new section because you're missing one, I would just select the title and select the smaller body information. I would copy it. I would go down and skip a line and I would paste it in there, okay? Obviously, you can go right in and change the words, whatever you like. So here they've set the formatting up for you already. So that can be really, really helpful. By the way, the XX just means fill in the words. The present is only if you're still working at that job. If you're not currently working at a job, just put whatever the last month and year. You don't have to have the exact day. Every now and again, people will do that. You really don't have to have it. Most employers don't care if you were out of work for part of a month, right? They understand that concept. Okay. Oh yeah, if you were trying to get to that, hang on a second. In Google Docs, you would go over here to your Google Apps. You would pull up Google Docs and it would just be right in there. You would grab one. If you weren't happy with the formatting, what I sometimes do is I'll click on it, select everything, and then I put it in the blank document. And that seems to get rid of some of the formatting things that might cause you problems. Okay, let's see here. Yep. Did that. Margins. Normal margins are fine. Like the automatic default margins. Slightly wider margins can look nice too. You want to usually avoid very narrow margins unless the resume template is already set it up, because if somebody is photocopying this and it gets tilted just a little bit, sorry, I'm gonna tilt it on you. What you can end up with is part of your information off the paper, and you don't want that. So be cautious about really narrow versions of it. Alignment, the most common I would say would be aligning everything to the left-hand margin like we saw. You can also do centered. You would never align it to the right-hand side because we always read left to right. Sometimes you'll see a combination, like the name part will be centered up top and the rest of it will be lined up with the left-hand margin, okay? Now, you can also just start with a completely blank document and set up all your own formatting. That is totally fine. People who are comfortable using Google Docs or WordPerfect might be very comfortable doing that. But I know some people aren't, so that's why I've put some of the other options in here. You do want to make sure that your subheadings stand out in some way. They should not look exactly the same as your body text. You can use bold, like this darker stuff. You can use italicized letters where it kind of slants over. You can make your subheadings a little bit bigger so it catches the eye. You can write it all in capitals. You can try a slightly different font. That'll make it stand out. I would be careful with this. If it looks too different, it might be too eye-catching. You can underline the subheading, or you can try several of the above options at once. So if I go back, hang on a second, is it here? Look here, they did it in another color, which you don't have to have. They also made it all caps, and that makes it stand out. But then even within here, the company name and location, they did that bolded, the B for bolded, to make it stand out a little bit more, okay? And it just helps the eye kind of capture the important information. All right, we're almost done here. Let's see. You can use Canva. I'm going to very quickly pop over to Canva just so you can see it. Hang on, click. All right, and yay, it's so good. It already comes up with the resumes automatically, so you can see what I mean. A lot of these have the pictures. I would either not use them, or if I use them, I would take out the picture. Okay, I'm going to grab one that's kind of already set up the way we might like it. Let's grab this one. Well, let me do this. Okay, so it automatically sets up all the formatting, and I would just go in and print over it in my own information. Now you can play with this. Like if I don't like that, if I think, oh, that looks such an ugly font, I could go over here and use a different one. The problem is sometimes it'll throw off your formatting. Let's say I used that. See, now this one's a little bit bigger. So now I got to make it a little bit smaller to make it fit. So if you do a lot of that kind of stuff, it can get kind of fussy. The other thing I might do is like, this isn't dark. Is it already? Can I make it darker? Oh, it is actually already darker. Yeah, I kind of hate that. But it even gives you some examples of things that you could say. At the bottom, they've split up education on one side and extracurricular activities on the other one. You could have education on one side and skills on the other side, and that would work too. Okay. And then if you wanted to hand this in to me, what you would do is you'd hit share. Hang on, download. I would not do it as a ping. I would do it as, oops, hang on. PDF standard, download. It will then download it, give it a name, and then you could attach it to whatever you send me. And then you've got a beautifully designed resume that will also look beautiful if you actually want to use it. Okay. All right, we will wrap it up now, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow's the last class of the week. Give me a phone call if you need help with any assignments. Thank you so much.